happening? Computer's acting really weird. Okay. It's really weird. Bluetooth will not stay connected. Okay, hi guys. Lessons of love, playing with fire and not getting burned. I may not know what you're going through, but time is the space between me and you. There is a love that we know. Okay, I hope it's not too loud. But I just wanted to come on and talk a little bit about the current weather, meaning there's been so much happening over the last 48 hours, right? Particularly the passing of Queen Elizabeth. Let me turn this down, it's a little loud. And not getting back. I may not know what you're going through. Time is the space between me and you. There is a laughter that we know. Hold on, say yes, while people say no. Life carries on. So, I was saying the death of Queen Elizabeth has been a really significant event worldwide in terms of news coverage. And while I know, and it elicits several different, polarity basically, responses. You have the people who loved her and the people who hated her, basically. And maybe three, you always have three with the, the people who are indifferent in the middle, right? So, it also connects with astrology and the auspicious placings at the moment. I heard an astrologer talk about it. I can't, I didn't write it down, and my memory is just not that great, so I don't want to quote it and have it messed up. But if you look it up, I do know what it is. I just can't recall and put it together right now, and that's not the purpose of this video. It's not an astrology reading per se, but it's significant because, as one astrologer put it, and I'm not deeply into astrology. I've talked about this in different past videos, that I am not an astrologer in a in a formal sense, I do like astrology. I do like to, it's sort of like a pastime hobby to check in on the astrology placings. But what I do know is that I did it in a past life, because when I was interested in it at a younger age, I was good at it. Same with tarot. I do have tarot decks. I very rarely pull them out. But when I do, I have an instant proclivity for them. So, I heard one astrologer talk about, and I agree with him, that the fact that these events are occurring actually have a lot to say about the way that the world is changing right now. And that also coincides with the portals that I spoke about. Now, the other thing, it was interesting. One of the astrologers I was listening to, he was going through a whole account of, that's one reason why I don't like astrology, because it's just too exacting. And I've talked in the past about how exacting divination modalities do not appeal to me, because they're based on a lot of control. So, that's the drawback and limitation, which is why, again, one of the reasons why I don't practice, even though I have a proclivity and, sort of talent for instantly using divination tools. I'm more in tune with, as I said before, what some call high magic, but it's natural. I call it natural magic. Working with the laws of nature rather than trying to, utilize our will to change or influence nature according to our own, desires. That's how a lot of people have messed up in past lifetimes. And you get a lot of suffering based on that, because you become connected with all the events that you are influencing according to your will. You put yourself into the effects, the causation of what you have set into order. And it's as people say, kind of like trying to play God, right? You're supposed to really sort of just flow along. There is a certain degree of will that we're allowed before we get into that red zone. But like the Bible says, I always used to like the scripture when I was young, the highest form of praise is thy will be done. And that's the complete surrender. Again, that goes with the Buddhist dissolution of ego. Once you drop your ego and you flow within what the Christians call the will of God, now you're operating at your highest level, right? And so much more is actually available to you at that point. But anyway, back to, so I'm not deep into astrology, but it is something that I don't ignore, and I can, depending on what shape-shifting expression I'm in at the moment, I'll be more into it than others. And sometimes I get too into divination modalities. But okay, so back to though, the shifts. Paying attention. I do believe in some degree of divination, because again, in the Bible it says God made the stars and the whatever, and it said, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. So obviously that was a reference to divination.
or being able to read the signs, you know. Also, when the Bible speaks of revelation, they're talking about paying attention to the signs when certain things are to come. So anyway, the passing of the Queen, I want to say, well, Mercury retrograde, of course, began yesterday with a boom, bang, boom, right? And I hope that's not too loud. I know one time I did it, video and the music was so loud you couldn't even hear me. So we have Mercury retrograde, we have the passing of the Queen, you know, Gorbachev, as was brought up a few weeks ago or months ago, I can't remember exactly when he died, but, you know, it's just a lot going on. And although one could say that this is just natural and normal, you know, we could say that, you know, these things, it's just time for them to occur, which is true. I mean, she was 96 years old, Queen Elizabeth, right? So it's not like, you know, it's something unusual for her to die. But at the time that things happen is when it's interesting to note, because it's like they're like, you know, when certain people die, it's like they're workings. We do know that. They're workings, right? Okay, so what I'm trying to say in all this, or not, you know, I'm not trying to put down any law. I'm really just curiously discussing it as though you and I were sitting here having tea. Right? I've been questioning over the last few days, you know, the whole dynamic of CERN and how much of it plays a part in what's going on, right? With these shifts and with the, you know, stuff going on. We had this crazy heat wave in Cali and the West Coast over the last few days, and you know, one questions sometimes, because we know that very, very few things are normal, quote unquote, these days. Everything's so manipulated, right? So you wonder sometimes if it's their machines, their technology that's altering, you know, different things. And especially weather, because we know with HARP years ago, you know, they've been doing this for a long time. But it was also brought to my attention, I think I stumbled across an article one morning a couple days ago. I woke up and, you know, when I turn on my iPhone, you know, I get those news stories. I don't really go deep into any news stories unless it's something really significant. And it was about China, and it was about how they had done some kind of experiment with something that the experiment emitted, oh my gosh, it was like, how much was it? I want to say like 10 times, don't quote me, but 10 times the amount energy of the sun. Or it was like light, heat, light, something. And I wondered, I didn't go look at the article, but I wondered, how the heck did they do that? Like, what kind of controlled experiment is that, right? Because wouldn't that affect the space that they were in? You know, how can you contain those types of things? Even with CERN, sometimes I wonder, with that science, like, how can you contain that? Which leads me to believe, because I don't know if you can make man-made chambers that can hold that type of energy output. I mean, but it's probably possible. I'm not a scientist. But, you know, I speculate sometimes that they're creating, you know, like that's the thing you know, you can create, when you create portals, and that's what I wanted to kind of focus on a little bit, because that's what we know CERN can do. And not just CERN, we forget that there are other hadron colliders around the planet. So we focus on CERN, which is probably intentional. They probably have us looking at, you know, that old trick where you look over here when all the big stuff is happening, maybe with the other hadron colliders all around the world, right? One, I believe, being in Texas. But yeah, you know, you can open portals now in a quantum. I mean, we do it all. Again, remember, all this technology that they're doing, always remember that we are doing it, we were doing it before they you know, started building the technology, because they're modeling it after, you know, what's going on with the human technology. So, you know, we are the blueprint for all of their, you know, counterfeit technology that they, extrinsic technology that they create. It comes from us first, and they model it from us. They might have help from a few, whatever you guys want to call them. I know everybody doesn't believe in extraterrestrials, whatever, you know, but they do receive assistance from other, you know, humanoid beings and non-humanoid beings. But you know, we are literally the blueprint for the technology. We can do everything that they do and use with their extrinsic technology. You know, we're the ones that, so that's why they don't want us to know you know, what type of power we have, because then you know, we'd be the ones running things. Because that's how it was always originally supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to be monarchies and all this, you know. I mean, but then again, it wasn't supposed to be animal-like procreations with, you know, and populations. I hate to tell you guys. That's a part of our GMO, you know, creations, where you have, like, think about it, animals birth litters and have like many children, and also the inclination to keep creating replicas of yourself is really based on an impulse of, even within the animal kingdom, that you may not you know, you may not survive, and so you want to have as many possibilities to you know, leave on, you know, leave behind progenitors that are going to continue the species. That's the whole point of, you know, physical replication via childbirth or birth. And when you look at insects and animals, maybe based on the hostility of the environment, you know, they have even less odds. So they have to, you know, create lots and lots of, and they have shorter lifespans too. So if you ask me, you know, not to be aligned with Bill Gates or anything, or the Rockefellers or whoever else is trying to do population control, but, you know, and I don't believe that there's, you know, too many people on the planet than the planet can support, because the planet can support a lot of life forms. You know, there's still, as people will bring up, there's still places on the planet that, you know, square footage that we haven't even touched. So it's not about overpopulation. Now, in terms of control, the reason why some people talk about overpopulation is because it's more than they can control in empires, right? They want to create empires that they can control. And again, some of these people believe that that's their charge, you know, that they were left, because originally there were, you know, king and queenships that were, you know, you know, set up by the parents of humans, the meaning the quote unquote, deities, and or, you know, again, I really hesitate to use the word extraterrestrial because a lot of people don't really relate or resonate with that. I just call them ancestors that were more evolved or potent than us. Because again, we are gene spliced. Y'all got to remember that we are gene spliced. I don't know. I'm sure I've done a video on it or touched on it. The hybrids of we already know we already know the ones that have to deal with primates. That's the official science. But there's also what do you call it? Porcine. That's how I pronounce it. Pig, basically. Canine, dog. Something that has to do with rats, because you notice how rats have very similar systems as ours, which is why we do so much experimentation with them. But it goes deeper because, oh my God, tepid tea is sort of the worst. You either want it hot or throw some ice on it and make it cold. I've got this fan going, so it's probably cooling off my tea. Ancient Egypt lore speaks of the different races, and not just that Indian lore from ancient India with different, animal-esque deities, like Sekhmet is cat, which is leonine from the planet of Lyra if you're dealing with galactic history. And then we can even look at like the mythology of Rome and their people comes from the mythology of Romulus and Remus, who were suckled by a a wolf. They had that show that it was really good at the beginning. It has the best freaking soundtrack. Oh my God. Or not soundtrack, but the theme song, which I used to play over and over and over and over. Oh my gosh. I have to play that one time for you guys. The Raised by Wolves theme song is amazing. It's probably one of my favorite songs. Very dystopic, especially with the like the what they would show visually before the show started, or before the episodes would begin every week. So yeah, we are definitely gene spliced a number of times, not just once or twice or 3 or 4 or 10 times. And just think about it. It also segues into the ufology community, which I was a part of for decades. How the whole, lore, it's not lore, the whole, talk of abductions, right? And what would happen during those abductions, the theories of what would happen during those abductions. What happened to my seal? Let me see. I had oh, it's still, okay, they're doing a different version of it. So, I hope this is the real, okay. I was saying the abductions, what would happen is there were different theories back then in the ufology community, theories based on actual experiences that the abductees would, would report. So you have some who, and I have family members who have had the abduction experiment. That is why I got into ufology at a very, very young age, barely out of my teens. Because as a child, I heard the story repeated over and over. Well, not over and over, but I would ask to hear the story again. Because this is before, there was a lot of, stuff on UFOs, right? Or aliens. And it was a story from back in the 70s where my aunt and uncle both had what becomes the classic abduction experience. And, neither of them had talked to each other. They both told my grandmother. And it was like the exact same story on the exact same night. But from hearing that story when I was a little girl, I always, was curious about it and used it to investigate once I became older. But that's what got me into, and then, I came across this UFO community, which was 99.9% white, and I was always the only person of color that was at these conferences. I think I mentioned this before, but maybe I'll go into that later. Another time, a whole video for that. The point was that the abductees from that community, many would talk about how the extraterrestrials would gather their genetic material or do something that had to do with their reproductive system, or they were experimenting on them, altering their their genes, basically, or something like that. So there was that, and then the other theories were that some of them, well, not theories but stories, is that some of them would be given special abilities and gifts, and the ones who actually talked with the aliens. And I mean, since then, they've been, when I say they, experts or researchers, or the people who are, us, I should say, who are interested in this, because this was not something that was presented in the very beginning in the community and culture of, ufologists, that, there were correlations with the Bible. So, I mean, the Hositian work, didn't really hit big until the 90s, probably the late 90s too. And then, the Indigos are the ones that really kind of brought that whole community. I mean, again, I always talk about, I remember David Icke, before anybody knew who he was. Because I used to go to the Bodhi Tree here in West Hollywood on Friday nights. We'd eat dinner, and that would be my place to hang out. And Bodhi Tree Bookstore, on Melrose in West Hollywood, which was this New Age bookstore that goes way back into the probably 70s, I think. And Shirley MacLaine made it really popular when she wrote a book called, was it Out on a Limb or something like that, back in the mid-80s, I guess it was. And, that kind of heralded in a new age, movement. But, oh my God, that was like the best place to go. It'd be people from all over the world that you would meet in there, and you could just stay all day because they had all these different sections before there was like a Barnes and Noble. And, you just go, they serve tea. You could go just pour your own tea, and you just go, and this like wood floors, wood bookshelves, crystals, and tarot cards, and everything you wanted that had to do with spirituality. And you just, stay there and read all day. So anyway, my point was that the ufologist community And there used to be lectures there too. You could see a lot of the authors who had written a lot of these. Oh, I was talking about David Icke, yeah. David Icke. I mean, I tell people, I remember, I'll tell you how I can always reference different things is that um, I had the VHS. I had the VHS of what's his name? Mutwa. What's his name with the C? Credo Mutwa. When I first interviewed him and brought him out, I had the interview on VHS that I purchased at the Bodhi tree. I remember some of Ike's first books, and there was this guy, one of my favorite. I haven't seen him. I need to Google him. His name was Bob Frizzle. Bob Frizzle had a series of books. He was similar to David Icke, but David Icke just persisted and kept going. A lot of people I know think he's an agent. I mean, I've never worshipped any of these people, but he just became popularized and trended. I think he's a Catholic one. That's probably why he had ambition, where a lot of people maybe didn't, and a vision, and he just worked it. And so the point was, all of these theories on, abductees and the purpose, But the point was, the original point was that we're GMO'd, many times. Sitchin has brought that out, and now others have furthered it. Michael Tellinger, I remember meeting him at one of the conferences, and that was just because he's kind of new. That was in the 2000s, maybe before 2010. I remember I saw him at a couple of conferences when he had first brought his book out. I had his first book, and he was theorizing, the Africa, because he came after Credo, of course, but I haven't kept up with his, I used to have his newsletter, but I haven't kept up with his latest stuff, because they all just get too trendy for me after a while, right? The only one that I, really, really was kind of cult-like into, and she goes way, 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 way back, before most of these people who are now, considered the face of the modern new age, postmodern, there we go, the postmodern new age era is Ashiana Dean, with Voyagers, Keelantic Science. That was the one that I culted out in a little bit. Not like I went to go live on a farm or anything with them, but I was so deep into her stuff in the 90s because it was so amazingly compelling. And then she fell out with Drenvalo Melchizedek, and I think it was probably some magic and stuff going on with them. I think I'm sorry, but I just wasn't feeling him from the beginning, He's the one that the whole flower of life symbol and stuff is based on, but he kind of came out with his stuff after Ashiana Dean, and she was a Virgo too, so she criticized publicly because she was kind of like, she was real deep, like, mystic type person, and she she criticized that flower of life and his concepts of the Merkaba. And she said he was like intentionally misinforming people to create some kind of off-balanced harmonics, like he was working for some faction, which I don't not agree, because you had the priests, that came in and always did this, the cults of priests that would come in and twist things and create Christic spins, that is what the Catholic Church is all about. You know, those are priests who wanted to control the power that was, you know, coming from a more balanced perspective. And so they, you know, would come in and hijack the information, either kill off or, you know, put spells on, or you know, discredit, you know, the people before them who were trying to deliver the real information. And they did it, like, you know, because anti-Christic is, you know, you could just, again, it's truth with just a little bit of, you know, disinformation that, you know, twist things, which kind of takes me back to what I was thinking about today when I, you know, after thinking about the astrologer that I heard talk about the events of the day and how, you know, I think he was saying something about how things, I think it was Uranus, Mars and Uranus or something like that, where things get kind of, he didn't say they go off of the timeline, but he kind of, I don't know if he's into timelines, because he was more of an exacting astrologer, which I think kind of limited his perspective a little bit, if you ask me, from my perspective. But he was talking about how, you know, things kind of went down a direction that they weren't necessarily supposed to go down. For instance, he was saying how when Queen Elizabeth was, you know, became queen, she wasn't even supposed to be queen. Like, it was only because of some turn of events, you know, with Andrew, I think it was, is it Andrew was his name? Her uncle, you know, marrying Wallace and abdicating the throne, and then her father dying, that led her to be queen, but she was never born to be queen. And he mentioned Trump, and he mentioned Lyndon Johnson in Vietnam. He mentioned some American historical events and how these events kind of were never really slated to happen, you know, so it's kind of like timeline stuff, right? And I always wonder, you know, so having said that, it made me think, yeah, was that technology then? Was that, you know, timeline manipulation then? Because we've had the technology forever. We know that we have, you know, people don't put together the time travel technology, which is a huge element. I mean, it's so difficult to talk about anything without talking about that. You know, like, we know it, we those of us who know, we know about it, but we forget to integrate it with what, you know, what comes up. It's kind of like I was saying the other day, like, we have the knowledge of quantum, you know, science, quantum theory, quantum, you know, but it's like we have that knowledge on one side, and on the other side we have, you know, the gravity of our practical science that we, you know, can't seem to, you know, lift off from. You know, it's like a rocket. You can't quite lift up yet. You don't have the technology, the rocket science to actually make that thing lift. And that's how we are. Like, we're still grounded in the old paradigms of limitation through the limited sciences, right? But so yeah, timelines are definitely being manipulated, if you ask me. And I mean, I know it because I know it as an oracle. I can feel these things, and I've said that for many years without even having the language, having to be, you know, bold in saying them. I always say, lucky for me, I came from a family that I could pick up a phone and call one of them and just, you know, do what I'm doing right now before there was a YouTube or internet even. And, you know, I would have a listening. I could talk for hours on the phone and have a listening because they had a context for what I was talking about, and I was really blessed to have them, you know, at least have that in my life. Otherwise, I think I would have gone crazy. with the type of stuff that my whole life I've been present to within my experience, internal specifically. So yeah, the events of the day, how much of them are heralding signals of where we're shifting. You could do the astrology, you could do the numerology. A lot of people focus on the numerology. The numerology cracks me up sometimes. I definitely, again, I recognize. Give me some water here. My tea is ginger. It's a ginger hojicha that I make with ginger powder, very strong ginger powder, raw ginger powder, organic, with a organic hojicha, which is my favorite tea, which is a roasted brown, smoky matcha. It's really good, and it's like the lowest tea. The tea with the lowest caffeine content, but it still gives you like a little kick. But it definitely will clear you out. So that's what I'm experiencing right now. I always take milk in my tea, oat milk and coconut milk. Sometimes when I don't have oat milk. But it's really got my third chakra clearing out. Okay, so see, because I kind of forgot where I was, so they did a really good job, didn't they? But portals, timeline shifts, occurring right now as we speak, astrology led or astrology guided. Gonna change our time synchronistically, and I did a whole video the other day on Joni Mitchell, and then this is Seal, and I forgot that on this album that I'm playing, he did a tune with Joni Mitchell, and that's so deep because the song is "If I Could, I Would Make You Understand." There's no reason for you to lose your mind, because I've seen something that's going to change our time. If I could, I would. Wow. Totally synchronistic, right? Totally. But yeah, so yeah, I would say expect some very interesting events. And again, we're in the sun cycle of Virgo, which it's all perfectly aligned with the events that they would occur in Virgo during the month of the harvest, shift, harvest season shift, fall and autumn, which was really considered the most important season of the year. We also have Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur coming up. So you always, like I said the other day when I did the Virgo video, a lot of people sleep on Virgo, and that's good, that's fine, because that's how it's supposed to be. Because the most powerful magicians are the ones who aren't out advertising and proselytizing and shaking their ass, excuse my language, or throwing their face, or trying to gain power, extrinsic power, right? Like, think about it for a minute. Think about it. I'm not saying the children of the Virgo energy are all perfect, but the template and the archetype itself, in its highest form, is something that strives for purification and perfection. You know, the mastery of helping people, the mastery of caring for, the planet and for others, loving others as we love ourselves. It's also mythologically the sign of, in pagan mythology, of witchcraft and and so there's dark and light to that, right? There were good witches, good wizards, good, magicians who weren't seeking those, again, powers that have the knowledge of how the material world is based in order to use it for their own egoic, selfish reasons, to intentionalize their will, to impose their intentionalized will onto others for the sake of power, because that comes out of a dark, a dark place of fear, right? So anyway, blah, blah, blah. Not blah, 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 but I've talked about that, and that wasn't, I don't have any real subject matter for today. I did have some things on my mind that I wanted to spill. And again, it goes back to being prompted by the death of Queen Elizabeth, which again, so many people, especially people of color, have a negative, negative feeling because she was a queen of, a country that colonized a lot of, melanated countries, right? And I get it, I'm a melanated woman, so, and I had my period of, dreadlocks down to my butt back in the 80s and 90s. And I was very socially aware, politically minded, and all that history really mattered to me, and it still does. However, what I will say, and I may lose some of you, is that it's really in line with any other empire. The British Empire is in line with the Ottoman Empire. Other empires have done worse. And again, I'm not praising the British Empire, but when I hear people like really going hard on the British Empire, and I know the history of the Windsors, they're really German. I mean, I know, but that's what happens during wartime. I thought I had plugged that battery. My battery just died. So yeah, but I'm just gonna keep going. It's not my phone battery, it's just my laptop battery. So yeah, it's when we look through history, going back, Babylonian history, Ottoman history, Arabic empires. Now we don't have a whole lot about African empires, but I'm gonna tell you, Africans wasn't, that much, because it's not about the people, it's not about the culture, it's about the leaders, and the leaders rise to the top generally, with the exception of very few, they generally, fall victim to, the ruination of ego, you know. So these cycles just repeat themselves, and it doesn't always matter, because the infiltration goes into any culture that whose time has come, and everybody's gets a turn, right? Everybody gets a turn. Game of Thrones taught us that. They limited it to, European history and prehistory, but we all know by now that the first, the older empires and civilizations came out of Africa, right? And we know before that, it was Atlantis and Lemuria and others that we don't even have the history of, except through channeled and very mythological sources. But those things will too be discovered. And then we go even further into galactic history and the empires of, our ancestors, our non-human ancestors. So, it's a game again. I mean, I really, the human part of me really resents when, some people try to make it out like others are just, so bad in a way that that their lineage never was, because it's just not true. Like I said, Christian, Arabic, Asiatic, European, Indian, them Indian wars in the Bhagavad Gita, please. There are very few, I won't say that there are none, but there are very few, a handful of cultures that got it right and that kept, their rulerships, their empires, near perfect. It's very hard. And for those who are anarchists and who do not like the whole concept of rulership and thinks that was never supposed to be, well, again, if you go back to understanding that the nature of humans is that, the history is that we're hybrids. And so the point of appointing monarchs or rulers over the people is that, people were still operating very much out of their animalistic, beast-like, which we've kind of regressed back to in many ways. It's just more sophisticated beasts. Again, go watch the movie The Isle of Dr. Moreau. The Isle of Dr. Moreau with, what is his name? Oh my God. I had some family members that knew him. Oh my God. He was the Godfather in the original Godfather. Marlon Brando. Yeah. Look that up. It's hard to find that movie now. But watch that movie and you will understand the state of, really all of our lineage. We were created by our creators. If you want to call them Inky or Enlil, or you want to call them Aludamare and the Orishas, or you want to call them, Zeus and, and Dim, Zeus and Dim, but we all had these architects who, manipulated our DNA and created offspring. I talked about this in the Westworld video of how we're now doing that with artificial intelligence. And so we find ourselves in the same position as our makers found themselves. And again, this is the nature of you know, of history and creation, civilization. So anyway, back to Queen Elizabeth II. You know, one day I'll talk a little bit about, maybe the reason why I talk about this is because, again, I'm admixtured. And so, you know, and as an oracle, I can pick up on bloodlines in within me and within other people very, very easily. You know, the sensitivity that I have, I can tap into bloodlines, and I can read it on people, you know, where their lineages come from. And some people are just now starting to get into this, but I project that in the next 5 years or so, that's going to be the big thing. It's really hard right now, though, because it's kind of a Pandora's box, and it will blow the lid. I think I did a video where I talked about the Moors. It's going to blow the lid off of a lot of stuff, and it's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings. But once we move through that, then we'll realize how we can, you know, deal with our DNA to heal and to, you know, create things. That's why we were given knowledge of it. But yeah, we are definitely created beings. And yeah, there's, you know, I mean, so a lot of people were like, once they realized the futility, not futility, but, you know, it became like really, you know, like depressing to think that, oh my gosh, you know, I'm created and I'm this low creature compared to the gods or compared to whatever. You know, that's where you get the caste systems and hierarchies and stuff like that. And it became so depressing that a lot of, you know, humans were just like, just leave me alone and let me be wild. Let me be a wild animal and let me, you know, evolve on my own schedule and timetable, and let me determine whether, you know, because the monarchs were shepherding people, you know, that's why they always were considered models too, and they were kind of highly iconoclastic, because having leaders, you know, even today, celebrities or the Pope or, you know, religious leaders, whatever, it's all been a matter of iconoclastia to model to the people how to evolve and progress within society. So the anarchists usually are the people who don't want to play that game, you know, and I'm not criticizing that either. You call them children of Cain too, you know, who want to just kind of do their own thing and be wild. Like look at it like Homo sapien sapien and you know, Neanderthal, you know, like the point was, let's say with Homo sapien sapien, because they won out, right? So the point was, you know, if you keep along this prescribed path, you will keep evolving and developing, and therefore, actually, nobody talks about this, like I said, with the DNA, triggering your DNA, because it's your behaviors and your choices that can trigger your DNA along certain paths, or your brain. Some people would say it's your brain. Well, your DNA controls your brain too, right? But yeah, so with certain, you know, behaviors and choices and thoughts, you know, you evolve internally and collectively to where you can create, you know, the type of external and template, you know, internal paradigm that you want. That's how we create. See, this is what people don't know. These are the like mechanics of creation. It's not a done deal. Western society is so like stupid with, you know, again, this is the danger of taking what people have told you and making it an inflexible truth and based on quote unquote facts. Like, facts are things that people have given to you based on contrived premises that they wanted you to pledge allegiance to so that it could evolve. It's a trickery way of, you know, usurping the creation path, or the, you know, the evolutionary path, you know, because now the liberating tool has been understanding that the world is based on quantum principles, not scientific principles in the limited form, but quantum. And quantum is based on anything effing goes, right? Anything goes. So, because it's based on your awareness, it's based on, you know, your awareness, and it's more than just an awareness. It is, I mean, it's awareness at different levels, right? So not just awareness in terms of your mental, deductive skills, but an awareness of your spirit, right? Based on processing your experiences, and then also based on your spiritual initiative evolution, meaning you have initiations that you go through in your spiritual evolution. And, you know, once you go through so many initiations, it kicks a new level of awareness. It kicks this process of birth, you know, rebirth and rebirth and rebirth and rebirth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth. And that's part of the evolutionary path. Anybody who reads tarot knows that. You have, you know, the death card, and, you know, the fool, and, you know, so this is the process. Scorpios know this. This is the process of continual death and rebirth that actually takes you along the path of evolution. And you want to be able to do this elegantly. You want to be able to learn how to die and resurrect elegantly, so that you can, you know, create a sophistication of spiritual, you know, evolution. So it's a lot, but I was talking about the admixtures that, you know, bring in the knowledge of, you know, held within one group, the wisdom, not knowledge, of different groups within your DNA, which is kind of why the whole mixed race thing is promoted on a higher overtone. You know, there's lower reasons why, which is eugenics. But the Moors, like I said, the Moors were doing this before, I won't say anybody, but they've been doing it for so long that I really don't want to hear it when some of them, again, everybody's just working for their own, you know, glory. And, you know, a lot of groups think that if they were on top, they would do things better and make it better. But, you know, mostly everybody's been on top. We're really down to the wire. Europeans were the babies. They were the last ones. And if you ask me, because most other cultures, empires rather, are cultural empires, are old, you know, ancient. It ain't really no new group. That's why we're heading into artificial intelligence now, right? So, so it's a lot going on. But yeah, the whole stuff happening with these transitions, It's because we're shifting, and it's going to keep happening like this because not only are we shifting eras, historically we're shifting with the big Aquarian age. Like we just got into formally the Aquarian age shift, so you can expect that more of these shifts are going to be happening. So yeah, you can use astrology as a, ancient sort of divination science, to help you, guide you if you want to know, if you want to get forecasts. But also understand that we have time travel technology that can rearrange, the natural trajectory. And I'm a witness to that as an oracle. Again, I'm very sensitive, and although I didn't paint because I'm not doing the whole intellectual science, mental, mind, masculine thing anymore. I do it when I'm called, and I do write still, but I'm not trying to prove to nobody based on putting facts together for them. I'm trying to change that whole paradigm. Like, learn to use your intuition more instead of your memory, and because those are rote masculine techniques of control. So I'm not writing down stuff to prove to you that what I'm saying is true. I don't have time for all that. I used to. That used to be what I thrived on, just like everybody else. But I'm working toward a paradigm shift of that. You don't need all that, Not if you have developed if we had gone to schools where we learned more feminine aspects and our faculties of intuition, our body, this generation did take that over in its rebellion, which is what the youth are always supposed to do. Bravo. I've been rooting for the indigos and then the millennials and now the post-millennials since, whenever. You're supposed to be rebellious so that you can, especially if the current template is, is oppressive or off, or suppressive. And it has been suppressive. The whole patriarchal, era has been suppressive of the feminine. One of my major projects that goes deep into the origins and angle of that origin and how it's wreaked havoc. Not just that it has, but how in a non-political, extrinsic way. Well, I'm sorry, actually it does implicate that. But the point is that, intuition, instinct, body wisdom, things that go beyond the intellect and the rational, deductive, reason, factual. Facts are not truth. Again, facts are facts. Truth is higher than facts. A fact is just something that is a part of this sequential timeline, right? But truth goes beyond all of that. It's much vaster. And facts can be rearranged, literally. Again, you don't believe me? Science, the Earth was once the center of the universe, according to science. That was a fact. But then it got changed, right? And the facts, once you could not defy gravity, fact. And then that got changed. Airplanes. You can't fly. Humans can't fly, fact. And now you got air packs, and pretty soon you're gonna see people developing. Because levitation is another quote unquote science, and science does not have to express merely as a technological phenomena. external phenomena. You know, you can learn. We can learn how to fly from an awakening of our consciousness within. I remember back in, I always say 2016. It was some major shit that took place in 2016, and this is what I'm talking about because it was a timeline breach. Mandela effect is my hallmark always for that when people scratch their heads. But I remember a lot of us were having flying dreams right around then. Do you guys remember that? I don't know. You know, I tend to think it's always younger people watching my videos, but if there's some people that are older, you might remember if you were in the spiritual community, quote unquote, or keeping up with the information that a lot of people were having flying dreams, you know, and yeah, humans can freaking fly, you know, especially humans who are crossbred with, you know, I did a video not too long ago who are crossbred with, you know, quote unquote angels. I call them angels instead of angels because it's very sacred, geometrical, how they're created, you know, as light beings, true light beings. So you have fallen angelics, you know, jinn are a part of it. And I told you guys, all jinn are not evil, you know. All fallen angelics are not evil. They can be redeemed, some of them, but, you know, a lot of them, you know, haven't chosen that path. You know, they have their own development. Think of Lord of the Rings. Think of all the different types of, you know, beings that exist that are on this planet that are humanoid, interdimensionally. But anyway, so facts, you got to go a little deeper. The people who still are limited by knowledge and facts are the ones that are actually holding us back, you know, intentionally or unintentionally, because a lot of them were, you know, it's bred into their DNA. It's been grafted into their DNA. All these secret societies and stuff, they put that shit in your DNA. I know, I'm a descendant of, you know, secret societies too, you know, of generations of secret societies, you know. A lot of us are children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews of Masons, you know, in different orders that go back even before the American Masons. So again, as when you become an oracle, you tap into all of this stuff, and then you research it. Then you research it like they taught you to do. So then you validate it on more than one front. But trust me, all of that is coming to an end. And, you know, thank God for the younger generations, even though we know that they really challenge each generation. They put something in the cultural, experiential template that challenges them deeply. You know, I tell people all the time, like, for the indigos, it was ADHD. For the millennials, it was like, what was it? Autism, and you know, like just different things. You know, suicidal ideation was huge for millennials. But it's always to hijack the fact that their genome is expressing magical stuff. And so the post-millennials, you know, they've got the most amazing avatar, you know, DNA that is gonna, you know, is slated to bring so much, you know, so many breakthroughs for the human template. So that's why they've attacked them, you know, especially even with this, you know, pandemic crap and the stuff they've offered for that, which really suppresses, you know, is meant to suppress that. Because the other thing you have to realize, and then I'm going to get off because I know this is a long video, but the other thing you have to realize, guys, is it's not just the children. Like, once the next generation gets the new uploads in their DNA naturally, and they express those, then it expands to all of us, right? It's kind of like the natural process of how a virus spreads. Morphogenetically is the word. So once, and it's not even just the kids, it says another adult that, you know, breaks through with some Bodhi consciousness That's where the word came from. It was that the monkey experiment, when they found out that the monkeys on one island that was way on the other side of the planet started developing the same traits that one island of monkeys who was isolated developed, because it's in the morphogenetic grid. People still don't understand this. I'm just so amazed. I mean, not like mocking anybody, but I'm just amazed at how our society keeps us so ignorant, you know. But like, we should know that second nature, that like when one human, and again, it comes from the narcissistic culture of individualism and the ego as a distinction. If we had developed, or when we developed, you know, I just say once because we were supposed to do it. I always say right before social media took place, because when social media hit my Facebook, MySpace, they started streaming all of our consciousnesses together artificially, when we were supposed to be doing that like naturally. We were supposed to be creating a Facebook telepathically, and it was already studied by, you know, these major, you know, like, again, go back and read of the history of Russia, China, Mexico. The United States didn't put their research out there, but those other countries did, about what they were studying with regard to psychics, and especially kids, psychic kids. And once they learned that knowledge, you know, the powers that be came together and created, you know, a plan for harnessing that from because they knew that it's morphogenetic, right? Again, once one of us gets it, it starts to spread, you know. So you know, this is what we need. This is why they're promoting narcissism and individualism. Individualism is a freaking Western, you know, existential, philosophical, theoretical, you know, paradigm. Communalism is a higher form of respect for the individual, but understanding that we are connected to our ancestors. Every single historical culture had ancestor worship. We are our ancestors. We are them. The genes are real expressions of our ancestors. That's why if you're a shapeshifter, you can express your grandmother, your auntie, your uncle might come through, you know. And this is a part, you know, being Native American too, we understand this in Native American culture, because it was an actual, you know, thing. I mean, shapeshifting is in a lot of cultures, but you know, the shaman as a shapeshifter is a big thing. But in order to do that, again, you have to become empathically linked to everything around you. And to do that, you have to dissolve the ego. Because when you stand on the ego as the only reality, or the highest reality of your existence, then you limit yourself. You only have a very narrow, not omniscient, a very narrow, you know, lens. But when you lose that ego, or, you know, consciously know how to fold that ego and pick up your awareness of self as all, that is how we now become, you know, a body of one. And it opens us up to the vastness of our capacity and our potential, because we're connected with one. But you cannot do that with an ego, and you cannot do that with an agenda of asserting your will over others. You know, that's fear consciousness. And again, that is what you know, oh my gosh, that really over an hour. So that is what you know, what keeps us from evolving. And again, the side that wants to control us, it's in their best interest for them to promote that, you see, as truth, when it's not truth. It's not truth. It's a perversion of truth. Yes, we're individuals, but that is not the greatest part of us. The greatest part of us is the part that is connected to all in the ecosystem. So again, morphogenetics works as an empathic technology that once you know, step one, you got to reduce this ignorant limitation that says I am a distinction. I am, my greatest aspect, Luciferian. Remember the story of Lucifer. My greatest expression is the expression of myself, the self. When the self is a fucking illusion, excuse my French, okay? That's infantile. Take a child development 101 course. that's what the when a kid first realizes, you can make analogies to the creator source in us. When we first realize that we exist, because we're born out of the state of the divine, right? That's how children are born. They have no limitation of understanding of it's not called understanding, of awareness of their connection to all, and all for them, God for them is the mother, right? So their mother, so in child development, they do it. They say, a child doesn't even know that it's not connected to his mother until it reaches about 2. Okay? Up until then, it just sees itself as a complete like a extension of the mother, like an arm, like an appendage, because it relies on that mother so much, the milk, the breast, everything comes from the mother. It was in the mother's stomach. It was created, and nurtured by the mother, with a contribution from the father, but once it gets 2, it goes into a stage of awareness of individuality. And we always say, that's where I always say, the no, like kids say no. I once heard because they can. That's the only reason. They'll say no, and it has nothing to do with anything. They just say it because they're asserting their awareness of their distinction, their independence. I have a will, I have an intention. Let me use it, because that reminds me that I am separate now, right? So they go through terrible 2s, they go through terrible 3s, and then they begin to mature, a little bit more, and they become more connected with their peers. So then it becomes a whole series of stages fitting in with the group, but all of these are supposed to be moved through because so then as you get older and older, more mature, it's really not about sequential age, because you could be an old soul as a kid and you start realizing, but the most mature stage you become defined by how much you give back, how much you serve others with no sense of the self. Do you see what I'm saying? The end game is not narcissism. Narcissism is being stuck in a remedial stage of selfish distinction. That's what I'm trying to say. Which is a natural cycle, a natural part of the cycle. But when you get stuck in a stage, you know what we call that in developmental psychology? We call that dysfunction. You've heard of the anal stage, where people get anal retentive stage. Like, people get stuck in stages, and that's what creates dysfunctions in behavioral psychology that you go get treatment for. Because somewhere along the line, you had a trauma or a shock, and you got stuck in a particular stage, and now you're operating out of that stuck stage. And while, it's your choice to do it, it's just not the natural progression for the highest expression of the template. The highest expression of the template is supposed to be a maturity, a progression, an evolution. Not an I'ma stay 2 years old and be stuck there. And again, it's not your fault. It's the way the society. You see what I'm saying? It's like cogs in the wheel. It's a big, game that I tell people has been in the works for centuries, if not millennia, right? Because when you're dealing with beings that have no time limit, it's like us playing a game with a fruit fly that has 24 hours to live, or even dogs, which only have 13, 14 years. We're dealing with beings that don't have the same time schedule as we do, so they could take hundreds of years to put a system in place and watch it evolve, like we do with rats when we're experimenting with them in labs. Because again, they have shorter lifespans, but we can learn by experimenting on them and watching the speed, and then apply that to our lifespans, right? So yeah, it's a lot going on. Timelines being manipulated. On top of that, keep that in mind. So that's why you're going to see that things that were supposed to naturally happen along the sequential timeline get usurped a lot of times, and we're just still not sensitive enough with all this crap we eat, with all the stuff they put in our air, with all the media, subliminal NLPs that they give us, to wake up the next morning and feel and sense that something's not right. They just took us through a loop or a portal, and we're going down a different trajectory collectively, right? They're taking us down. They pull us in black holes now with CERN. So it's just so much manipulation, and we'll get through it one way or the other. But the point is to stay aware as we're playing the game, to stay aware, to be inside and outside of the game simultaneously, and to continue to progress down our spiritual path, and not just progressing in the game, not just winning at the game of materialism and external superficial aspects. But we gotta go inside and consciously win internally, and then allow that to be projected onto the three-dimensional reality. That's how creation works, not contrived control, manipulation of the three-dimensional world. It works through us imprinting and working internally on ourselves and letting that imprint naturally, okay? That's what gets rid of the control, and then that's how we bring down a new heaven on earth. We imprint the 4, 5, 6, 7D that way, not through control, not even through political activism. I mean, that's like the lowest rung. I'm not saying don't do it if that's what you're called to do, because everybody has their path, but it's the lowest rung of manifestation creation. I always say, like, people are the children of Cain, like, you want to work hard, right? I mean, again, I'm not trying to mock you or nothing, but I'm just saying, and do you, boo-boo, but understand everybody's not on that level, and don't try to make other people, like, mock them for being too lofty or too spiritual when their path is to create through internal technologies. Some of us can manifest without working, without using our hands. Do you understand? It's still work on the inside, but it's not using your hands or your mind or your, you know what I'm saying? It's spiritual work. It's the remember in the dark crystal, there's who just or people know what monks. There are people who just sit and meditate and do more than fucking 5 million people who get out and do stuff in the 3D world with their hands, politically or whatever. So do understand that there are other levels, and that the level of working Capricorn that's why we say Saturn is the fucking devil. Sorry, just kind of, JK kind of, but it's like, like this control, this need to take over the world in the three-dimensional realm from an extrinsic perspective. Saturn, you need to fucking evolve too. and because you're probably not likely to just hand your power over, guess what? That bitch is gonna have to be taken. So, that's how you get Saturn to probably get Aries, Mars, Aries, and Scorpio to join their team to create wars and to fight, so that they can hold on to their power. Saturn also represents Capricorn, and Saturn also represents, you know what gets on my nerves whenever I watch like readings, you know, like because I have like a mild addiction sometimes as entertainment to tarot readings and astrology readings and stuff. And you know, one thing I noticed, it just gets on my fucking nerves. And again, you know, I'm not capping on Capricorns because I'm a earth sign, excuse me. And I love Capricorns, honestly. I love them to death. You know, I probably would marry one. But you know, I noticed that astrology readers do not like saying bad things to Capricorn. Like, they will read, let's say, like a Cancer or a Virgo all day, every day with bad news, you know, or they'll get up and go, they'll get up and go order dinner, or, you know, go to the bathroom while they're doing a reading for Virgo. They'll just diss Virgo, and you know, and just be preaching and like yelling at a Cancer, you know, like people like that. But when it comes to Capricorn, they just tiptoe so delicately around them, like, and it just gets on my nerves. It's like it's just kissing ass, and it just reminds me of, like, you know, because Capricorn does represent like rich people, like rich old people with power, you know, and you know, it's like the way people approach them, even if they know they're wrong, they're still going to be like very respectful because they're afraid of them, right? They're afraid of them. We're afraid of people with that type of external power. So you know, they need to evolve, and if not, Romanov, you know, the Romanovs, right? Like, off with their heads, just, you know, and that's kind of what maybe this transit, I feel, as an oracle, is bringing in. It's time to, you know, sort of do a little balance work, or at the very least, there'll be a challenge to those powers, and that could bring in some because those powers will pull powers that are, you know, people in, you know, who are in power, they are willing to go down because they don't give a fuck, right? So it's like, excuse my French, I don't know, I've shifted into now somebody who's like just cussing left and right. I've shape shifted, I guess. But it's like, you know, powers that be, when they're going down, they don't care. They're going to pull everything and everybody down with them that they can, since they're going down. So, you know, they're going to start wars. They're going to create havoc. Look at what just happened. Look at what just happened with the pandemic. You know, it's like, oh, so it's about to shift. Like, humanity's about to get their gifts and powers. Oh no, we're not having that. Like, turn on them CERN machines that we paid billions and trillions of dollars for. You know, let's use all the technology we have on time travel and everything now. Let's use all the technology we have on how to compromise the collective, genetically and spiritual genetics. Like, let's do everything. Let's also get ready to get off the planet or create cataclysms, whatever. Like, we're not going down like that. So again, that's Saturn and Capricorn energy. So I love you, you Capricorn people, to death. Trust me, I do. Like I said, if one of you proposed to me, I'd probably marry a Capricorn, honestly. That was evolved, of course, because it can also be very, very harsh and abusive. Not just physical, not necessarily physically, but they're just they got a lot of deep darkness in them. So, but again, and that's what I'm making comparisons to within the energy template, right? That you know, lots of positive traits too. Of course, we know the benevolent father, the protector. You know, there's a lot of positivity to be found, and you know, the one who orders chaos for us, creates chaos too, but orders it, and you know, guides us toward steadfast, you know, progression. But that dark side, that dark side is responsible for, a lot of the ills of our current age, and it's about to be tested. So, and again, please understand with astrology, we all have all of the astrological templates inside of us. If not in our chart, it's in our houses. So we all can tap into every form. You may say, I have no Capricorn anywhere in my chart, but you have, like if you have Cancer, you can tap into Capricorn through that, because that's but I don't remember what house it is. What is that? The 12th house or something? Or the 6th house? I don't know. But I know, it's the opposite. So, you can always tap into, if you're empathically aligned and developed, you can always tap into all of the different signs, right? And I say that to say, not just to live through them selfishly, but you tap in to help the template evolve. So you tap into the Capricorn energy, you apply empathy to that energy inside of yourself. You work through the issues and the problems, and then you put that back into the template, so that others can now, it can spread, to others, and help those with more dominant Capricorn make the bigger shifts, right? Because they're the ones, they're like the sun signs make the biggest shifts, because they're dealing more dominantly with that energy, right? But the rest of us can support that for any sign. Okay. All right. I went way too long with I thought my little tea time was going to just be really quick, and I was just going to kind of tell you about my connections with with British culture and lineage, and historically, the British are connected to the Egyptians quite a bit. That's why they have karmic history, and the Zulu tribes are connected with with the British. A lot of Moors are connected with the British. The British have a whole history of black Moors. So again, when you hear people attack, and I'm not saying defend Queen Elizabeth per se, because again, the Windsors aren't even real Windsors. They're Saxe-Coburgs or whatever. I can't remember their names. But all of the aristocracy of Europe and all over the world, we have such mixes. We have such mixes. There's every culture is admixtured. Just about, there's really no pure people anymore. A handful of any pure people, maybe the Aborigines, and they've mixed, put their, kind of mixed in the gene pools now in Australia, so they're getting more diversified. So yeah, cut it out with all that. I'm not saying there's no racism. God knows I'm not saying that. I'm a dark-skinned, melanated woman, and trust me, I experience it every day on the daily. Racism is alive and well. Colorism within the same race is alive and well. But I'm saying on a higher scale and octave, that stuff is sort of in the, it's real. It's real historically and now, but it's not real. You know what I'm saying? It's fact, but it's not true. There you go. It's fact, but it's not true. And again, that's because, you have people with phenotypes that look one way and they have more DNA. Let's say a brother and sister, let's say Latina. Let's use a different race. I have Latina friends and I talk to them all the time. And you have a brother who might look Spanish, Castilian Spain, and you have a sister who might look Indio, like a Native American. And of course, the Indio gets, kind of treated bad because of the colorism within our culture. But the sister who's dark skinned and looks India will have more Castilian DNA genotype than her phenotype expresses. You know what I'm saying? And the brother could have more Indio, and have more of his Native American ancestors in his genotype, but expresses its phenotype as the Spanish Castilian. So it's, you know, it's really not an external thing. It's really not. But we're still going to keep, you know, and we project that onto, you know, people. We project what they look like onto them. So then that causes them a lot of times to express as that, because we've labeled them, and they, you know, you ever heard, what did Eminem say? I am whoever you say I am, you know? So, you know, you project something onto people for so long, which is how the urban community has fallen into all of the negative stereotypes that they have. That was a working, that was a, you know, psychological experiment, that when you tell people they're this for so long, and they finally came into it, then that's what they become in their mind. Therefore, that's what they project as. That's what they express as, right? But once we start to rise above this crap, which we're in the process of doing and are still in the process of doing, even with all the new level of distractions that we accrued from the powers that be in their desperation during their dying hours. We are in the tower right now. The tower has been happening for the last 10, probably 20 years. You know, it just, again, when you're dealing with history, it takes a longer time than in, let's say, an individual's life. It's like the firefly, the fruit fly life versus the fruit fly span of life versus a dog's life, you know, span. You know, it's like versus a human's lifespan. So, you know, and we can play around with time too if we want. Time doesn't have to be. We can do whatever we want collectively. Don't you understand that? We could change all the rules to the game overnight if we agree to. So once we get that too, we can start accelerating manifestation and not have to play by these rules of how long it takes for something to change or happen. But in order to do that, we have to become aware, and there are steps. It's not about time, it's about steps in the process, right? And you can even transcend that. Again, nothing's limited, but, you know, it all seems to contradict itself when you talk about it in the same discussion. You know, which is why the smartest, most intelligent people say, the more I know, the less I know. Okay, guys. Hey, thanks for watching, and until next time, have a good one, and peace.